HDV was created by JVC, Sony, and Canon. Panasonic decided to take a different approach. They looked at some of the formats that they already had installed in their professional areas, which is the dvcpro HD formats, and applied it to the prosumer level. They came up with a camera called the HVX200, and this camera records to solid-state media called P2, and it actually shoots the same format that their $100,000 VariCam shoots in, which is the dvcpro HD format.
The price points on a HVX200 camera, from a purchasing standpoint, probably about $5,000 for the camera itself. Most of the accessories that people want are a little bit more. A lot of people like to get a wide-angle lens, which is probably going to be about $800. And a good tripod for it is probably about $700. The cards themselves retail for a 16 gigabyte card right now is about $900. That's to purchase. On the rental side, currently the rate is about $325 for a weekend for a complete package, and that's a Friday through Monday program. And with most rental companies, they'll do a 2 or 3 day week depending on the company, and that way you can take a camera out for a long term and negotiate a rate based on what the rental company is looking to do. So it's a very affordable system. Whether you're looking to invest in one as a purchase or try one out at a rental house, it's definitely an excellent system, and there's been a lot of very good projects accomplished with the P2 system, HVX200 camera.
In dvcpro HD, you're talking about a 100 megabit stream for information per second versus mini DV or HDV, which are stuck at around 25 to 35 megabits per second. I believe mini DV is 25, and HDV as well is 25 megabits per second. That means that the image can be compressed a lot less. It also means that each frame is keyed individually and compressed individually. So if you have dropouts, you're not going to have them lasting you half a second. It's not going to have problems with motion as much. And it's going to deal with color a lot better because it actually has 422 color space, which is actually 50% more color sampling of the image. It makes it an ideal or closer to ideal format for acquiring green screen or special effects work because it's going to give you much better separations and cleaner keys. The HVX200 is a unique camera because it's the first camera that came out under $80,000 that would allow you to shoot anywhere from, I believe, 12 to 60 frames a second, and in the HD formats. It also recorded to solid-state media. This P2 card is this little credit card-sized PCMCIA media that's flash-based, that's reusable, and they claim virtually indestructible.
Well, the P2 format came out very strong. As a rental company and as a company that distributes the media, it was an immediate hit. And I think one of the reasons for that is because of the solid-state nature of the P2 cards. The first cards that came out were 4 gigabytes. Soon after that, they had a 8 gigabyte card introduced, and now we're at a 16 gig and soon to be a 32 gig. The format itself is nice in that it transfers the information immediately into your computer or your hard drive, and people seem to like it in a lot of rugged situations.
Some of the advantages of this media is that it has no moving parts. You can actually, when you press record, it'll record right away. There is no threading and speeding up the tape, so you can actually capture events faster. Because it is a card, you can actually loop record. So the card could actually be recording while you haven't pressed record to maintain a cache. If you're doing sports, this is great, because then when the interception happens, you press record, it'll actually remember the last 10 seconds of the information you were recording, start recording from there, and capture what you want to capture. It'll allow you to do time lapse. It'll allow you to do slow motion or fast motion. And so it behaves much more like a film camera than any of the other cameras in the same price range. Now, there are some drawbacks to this media. The problem being is because it is solid, you do have to pay very close attention to the post-production workflow. Getting the media off of the card and into a hard drive, and you have to think of very very redundant backup solutions, because once you have that media off of that card and you format that card, that hard drive becomes your master. And as we know, hard drives do tend to fail at the worst possible times.
One of the things that is a concern is if you get your files transferred onto a hard drive and clear the card out, and then that hard drive happens to crash, you've lost your footage. So that would be the one thing that we've come across as something that is a concern, but can be overcome by backing that drive up, or making sure that you do have your files saved before you go ahead and reformat.
Having multiple storage solutions, multiple backups, is a must when dealing with P2 media. Another problem is the high cost to get started with P2 media. You have to make a high investment. Whereas with any of the HDV cameras, you're paying $42 to $50 or maybe even $6,000 for the camera. The tape is only going to cost you $14, and you can just keep shooting on different tapes. To get that first P2 card, it's going to be $900. So in order to get a decent workflow with the HVX 200, you actually have to have a higher starting investment than you would with any of the other HD cameras. Now, because of the reusable nature, eventually that investment is going to equal out to that same investment with HDV. The problem is that it's more money up front. So in order to start recording in HD media, let's say you want 2 cards, you're going to be investing at least $7,000 before even looking into accessories and tripods for the camera. So it is a little bit more of a forward investment, and it does limit you, because those cards, you can only record so much to a card. Depending on what you're shooting, recording times range from 1 gig a minute, which is at your standard recording rate at 1080 or any of the slow motion footage. It's going to be about 1 gig a minute. Or if you shoot in some of the special modes that came up for the HVX 200 called the natural modes, you're going to increase that to about 2.5 times that. So you're going to get maybe 2.5 minutes to 1 gigabyte. So to give you an example, if you're recording on a 16 gigabyte card, you're going to get 16 minutes or 17 minutes, just about, recording in any of the 1080 or 720, 60 frames a second modes. And you're going to get about 44 minutes if you record to 720, 24p natural, or 32 minutes if you record to 30p natural. So you're adding just about 2.5 times more space, but it is pretty limiting. Before the 16 gig cards came out, when the camera first came out, they only had 4 gigabyte cards. So you were really seriously talking about maybe a 4-minute recording time per card. A card that costs almost $1,000. Now, as the production ramps up and more cameras are sold, the cost of the cards is coming down, and the 32 gigabyte cards are around the corner, and pretty soon there's going to be 64 and maybe even 128 gigabyte cards in the market. So, at the moment, it's a fairly expensive workflow to get started with, but it does offer some of the unique capabilities that the higher end cameras would offer at a lower price point. One of the biggest issues we run into first-time filmmakers using P2 media is not being aware of the full workflow. Panasonic does not have the best website when it comes to drivers and support, because it's actually based off their Japanese website. So one of the things that I would say as a great tip is, if you are going to shoot on P2 media, make sure that you have your entire workflow set up. Walk into your production company or your rental agent, or talk to your resale representative, and make sure that they install the drivers into your computer. You have a way to get the information from the card into your editing system or into a storage solution, and figure out which way works best for you. There's multiple ways to do it, and not one way is better than the other. It's just which one's going to suit your individual need. And that stress is something that works with any of these formats. And one of the problems with the new technology that emerges today is that for 100 years, when people were working on film, the workflow has been completely laid down, and it is rock solid, and it is as good as you're going to get, and everybody knows their workflow. Now that you work with this newer formats, each new format is going to have its ups and downs, and it's going to have its got-ya moments as far as the workflow goes. So when you're doing pre-production, always look at your post-production workflow. Always look at what you're going to end. What is your end game? What is your goal as a filmmaker? How is your film going to be distributed, and which steps are you going to take to get there, to get to that point. If you're working with P2 media, it might mean that you have to rent a dvcpro HD deck to get that master tape out to a dubbing agency. Or if you're working with HDV, it might mean knowing that it could take 24 hours to render your 10-minute film.